Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Uh, Today we start our first lecture. This course is Highway and Airfield Pavement Design, and today is lecture 1 and lecture 2. Let's wait for the slide to upload. Okay, this is the topic that we are going to cover in week 1 and week 2. This is introduction to design principles. Then we have a topic of pavement materials. We have lot of failures in a pavement, so we'll discuss how many distresses in a pavement, how it is identified and how it is rectified. There is a maintenance technique that will also be discussed in this course. We move on to week 6 and 7, discussing stresses in flexible pavement, theoretically and by using a software layer. Week 8-9 is dedicated for traffic categorization. We also discussed the flexible method of pavement design, HTO, and in the next 2 weeks we discuss about rigid pavement design. Our course have also included airport pavement design, both manually and using a software. In between that, I will have 4 assignments and 2 quizzes. So this is how I said for basic concepts I've reserved 8 lectures. Then doing stress analysis, we'll have 12 lectures on that. And then last but not least, the advanced topics in pavement design, that I will have 12 lectures. Actually, you can see that I have divided the course content into 3 parts: the basic concepts, the elastic slab theory, and advanced topics in pavement design. This is a textbook, Pavement Analysis and Design. Some of the copy is available in the library, and obviously I will share with you the soft copy of the book as well. This is your textbook. You have to do exercises. All the lectures are extracted from the textbook, so whatever I teach, you will go back and refer to that textbook as well. Now start formally with the first lecture. The contents are pavement, types of the pavement, principle of pavement design, the failure criteria, aspects of pavement design, relative damage concepts, pavement thickness design approaches, empirical method and mechanistic empirical method. Now let's discuss what is a pavement. I know you are in final year and this is your optional course, so you may have an idea of pavement, but let's revise that and let's review how we can define a pavement. The pavement is the structure which separates the tires of vehicles from the underlying foundation material, and the later is generally the soil, but it may be structural concrete or steel bridge deck. Now, conceptually, when we say pavement, I may have a new pavement structure, but we may have a pavement structure or an existing pavement structure. So when we say the first line, we mean a new pavement structure where all the pavement is being supported by the soil, and obviously that soil is not the native soil. Whenever we have to construct a pavement, we have to improve that soil. There is a thumb rule about it, that the first top 6 inches of the soil should be removed. We get it compacted, and then the pavement layer is laid. So when we say pavement soil, actually we say it's a strata which is improved. It's not a native soil. For instance, you don't have to, if I ask you to construct a pavement on a grass, you have to first remove the grass, get rid of that 6-inch topsoil, and then start compacting. But this is very ideal situation. Sometimes we have to, when we, do all this, we find the soil is very soft. And when the soil is soft, you cannot construct a pavement directly on it. In that case, what we do is to improve the strength of that soil. This can be done in many ways. One of the way is to have a extra layer, maybe 6 inches of, and sometimes 12 inches as well, of hard rocks or what we call boulders that are spread, they are filled with some soil and get compacted. So that is called improved substrate. This is a very conventional method. In that method, even after removing 6-inch soil, you find the soil to be very soft. You have to again remove at least one foot of that soil as well. Then you just stack those stones manually, compact it, and that's your improved substrate. Now, sometimes nowadays, not nowadays, it's actually in the developed world, they have come up with a very, economical and very long-lasting solution. That is using geotextile in that soil, and then you come up. So anyhow, you have not, laying the pavement directly on the soil, but you have laying a pavement by using an improved substrate. The improved substrate can also be achieved by, what we called, some mechanical stabilization, in which either lime is added, cement is added, asphalt is added, or you can say any material. Sometimes the people are now using fly ash as well. So you treat that material, treat that, you add some chemical, you just, fluff it. It's like sowing a seed in an agricultural field. Maybe 4% on a cement, like that. So that's, we also call it stabilization, then compacted it. So, you can, the bottom of this, all this discussion is that the soil can be native, but I mean native means after 6-inch removal, right? So it's not native anyhow as well. Or it can be an improved substrate. So this is one aspect of the pavement. But other aspect of the pavement is your existing pavement has failed, and you feel that an extra layer of pavement can be laid in. Logically, this is done, and this is known as overlaying. And this overlaying can be of two types. One, is an structural overlay, and the other is a functional overlay. We'll discuss this later in this class, because even during this introduction. So you can have an extra layer of pavement on the existing pavement, obviously with some something you have to do about the old pavement. That's why it may be a structural concrete, or you may not have a pavement directly on the soil, but you have a pavement on the bridges itself. You must have seen that even on the bridges, you find an asphaltic layers. Why? We will discuss it later. So this is how you can define a pavement. Generally, in the scenario, you can define the pavement as either a flexible pavement and rigid pavement. Before I move ahead, and so though never, you can see in your screen, there is a composite pavement as well. So there can be 3 types of pavement. the flexible pavement, rigid pavement, and a composite pavement. Composite is that, you know, you already had a concrete slab, and then you have to improve some, say, riding quality on that. So you can have rigid asphalt pavement placed on a rigid pavement. You must be wondering whether you can place a rigid pavement on flexible pavement. You know, maybe, because you know the experience of doing that is not very fruitful. People have laid rigid pavement on an asphalt pavement, but the results were not good. But you know, not good, it means, you know, when I lay an asphalt pavement on a rigid pavement, I don't have to do much except some you know, treatment. But when I have to lay a rigid pavement on asphalt pavement, the problem is, if you cannot lay it directly, you have to broke them into, you know, pieces, get something out of it, get treat that uh, stones as a base. So, and then have an as pavement for rigid pavement. So in a true sense, the composite pavement, rigid and on flexible, does not exist, because you have to break that flexible pavement first. So if you have break, then it is a rigid pavement. You can use this aggregate, you can consider excuse me, as it's a broken stone. So it's not a composite pavement anyhow, right? So let's discuss. This is a very, you know, length of discussion everywhere. Whenever you know, teach the subject, or whenever you have to design a pavement, you have to explain someone. So what is the difference between flexible and rigid pavement? Now we go one by one. The first way of differentiating it is by the way these pavements are constructed, or the composition. As you can see, that flexible pavements are composed of properly graded aggregates with bitumen as a binder, while rigid pavements are constructed by using PCC cement, aggregate, water, and dowel bars for joints. But nowadays, even you can do away with the dowel bars as well, because you can now have a continuous concrete pavement without using a dowel. But anyhow, conventionally it is defined, it is assumed that it is a conventional pavement, so it has dowels. Now, how you can differentiate the stability? Stability is the internal resistance of a force that pavement react to the loads. Now, if you look at this scenario, in the flexible pavement, strength depends upon interlocking of aggregates, friction and cohesion, while in the rigid pavement, strength depends upon the flexural strength of the placed concrete. The third way is how they are designed. Now, the flexible pavements are constructed in number of layers. Layer 1, you may have a compacted subgrade, then you have a sub-base layer, then you have a base layer, and then you have an asphaltic base course layer, and finally you have an asphalt bearing course. Each cannot be done one at a time. Even, if you have a base, say 12 inches sub-base, you have to do it in 2 layers because of the to have a very good compaction. Conventionally, you cannot compact an aggregate more than a 6 inch at one time, right? Now, the rigid pavement, it's very easy. You just have have a shuttering. Sometimes you have to you have a lean concrete one day and the main concrete on the second day. So it's easier to construct the rigid pavement. Then we go to the traffic. Now this is where the time offsets. The flexible pavement, once I finish the wearing surface, I have to wait for 20 hours. I can open the traffic for open the road for the traffic. But why? But before that, this sometimes we take this as granted. In a very hot weather, you have laid a concrete asphalt concrete around 70 or 80 degrees centigrade temperature, and on the next day, if the temperature does not go beyond below 60 degrees centigrade, you can even not open the traffic after 24 hours. Because the problem with an asphalt is asphalt gets softening near asphalt gets flowing near 60 degrees centigrade. So once that is reached, and if it is below 60 degrees centigrade, then asphalt tends to set in its nature. So if you open the traffic, say 60 at around 65 degrees centigrade, without just following these rules that 24 hours are enough, you will find your pavement to get deteriorated, could damage. So it's very, you have to be very thinkful. Sometimes, we read this thing many times a book and we try to implement without knowing the consequences, without knowing the logics. So it's, even though I can write, I can record all those things, but it is logically below 60 degrees centigrade. If your temperature below 60 centigrade, if you have not achieved that temperature, don't open the traffic. And there is one thing more to it. There is an ambient temperature, the temperature that I feel now, and this temperature on the pavement is actually 25% more in the pavement. So if the room temperature, say, is the 40 degrees centigrade, right? So the pavement temperature will not be 40 degrees centigrade. It will be 50 degrees centigrade. So just measuring the pavement temperature, oh, okay, this is the pavement temperature, this is the temperature, I know, but you have to measure below 1 inch of the pavement. That will be the pavement temperature, not the temperature that we are talking about, not the temperature we are having now at our nose level or something, right? So it is the temperature below 1 inch. But that's these are very tricky, because you spend millions of rupees in laying pavements, and a small error in opening the traffic means you have to relay the asphalt. So very careful. Now, this is, it seems on paper, it seems that 14 days are required for opening to the traffic. But let's go back to the design, the construction. Pavements, flexible pavements are constructed in layers. So, at the end of a day, at the end of the event, actually constructing a layer will also take time as compared to, constructing a rigid pavement in a very minimum time. So these things do offsets, and then, one thing more, I'll just keep on this talking about the subject because these are the logics. The logic is, even after laying the layers, you have to check its compaction. And if you don't find compaction, compaction of your subgrade, say after 96%, 97%, again, you are in a problem. You have to relay that layer again. So, that thing I saw, I told you that it will need 24 hours. Actually, at the end of the cycle time is important. Constructing a pavement in layers and constructing the pavement in 1 or 2 layers. So eventually it get these things get offset. Now, move on. The joints. The flexible pavement doesn't have joints. You have to start constructing the pavement right from 8 a.m. in the morning, and you finish 5 p.m. That's it. You don't have to care about the joints. But there is a limit to the work, and there are stages. You cannot construct 14 kilometers of pavement in one day. So you have to join in the flexible pavement anyhow. But that depends upon how much speed you have worked, how much weather is permitted, how much good you work. But even then, you have a construction joint. And the problem with the pavement is the joints, because joint is the weaker portion of the pavement of any structure. So what happened is that this joint have to be rotated, and whenever there's a problem, this you have to start locating it from the joint, whether the joint in the transverse direction or there is the joint in the adjacent lane. Because you know a paver is sometimes 10 feet or 12 feet, so you cannot have a 24-foot pavement one at one go. So even you have a lateral joint as well, transverse joint you can say. So this there are joints. You know that's why I'm saying, you know, once you read these things, you go from the textbook. They are explaining it's very good, but there comes, you know, we have to think about it. It says joints, but it doesn't mean joints that are planned before. These are the joints that are forced joints, like transverse joint and the longitudinal joint, obviously at the end of the day, and transverse joint because you cannot construct two plane pavement in the one go. So there are joints. But other than that, there are no joints in flexible pavement. So when I say joints, I mean the joints that we know we have to do. Unlike a rigid pavement, you have a panels. You cannot construct a, let's say, even 500 meter of rigid pavement without having a joint. And this is why we call it a joint. But this is a conventional rigid pavement. Now we have come into the era where you can have a continuous reinforced concrete pavement, and then if you have a meshing, that's also be designed. If you have a meshing, you can go up to say 1 kilometer or like that as well. Again, there will be a joint, but that time the joint will be at the end of the day, the construction joint, or it will be a transverse joint because of the lane, the lane you can, maximum width you can achieve. So in this scenario, what I mean to say, we are talking about joints. It doesn't mean the construction, and it doesn't include the transverse joint. And when we talk about rigid pavements, there is one specific type of pavement in which the joints are necessary. But there are rigid pavements that don't need a joint as well. Right? We go on the cost, and this is where your whole thing of pavement is decided. The type is decided, and this is very obvious. If you are talking about the cost and you are talking about initial cost, flexible pavement is always considered. And then obviously the high costs are high for rigid pavement, but the life cycle cost of rigid pavement sometimes offset the life cycle cost of flexible pavement. Because for instance, you have constructed a pavement for say 20 years, and if all things goes well, you may have after 20 years in flexible pavement, you may have to repair it 3 times. At the end of 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and 20 years. And it may be sometimes even actually we think about a threshold line where you feel that you have to pave it. It can be after 3 years of the design life, it can be 7 years. So I'm talking about logically, even we have to the pavement is good, even then we have to maintain after 5 years. This is not the case with rigid pavement. Rigid pavement lasts for years and years, unless something extraordinary happens like earthquake, maybe some water line bursting out of it, there is a pumping, and there can be some other reason. But generally, it is considered that the pavement, rigid pavement, lasts for 20 years without needing a repair. And it is not considered; it's actually it also happened. This is the experience that tells us that it is like this. The load distribution, there is always a stress bulb, as you can see here. This stress bulb is always for flexible pavement. It means you can see that the load stress is maximum here, and gradually when you go below it, the stress is minimum. The force is same, right? The area is here, and now as we go, because of the thickness, this stress will get reduced. So that's we can say that the load transfer is gradual, and we need different layers to cater for stress. But as in the case of a rigid pavement, this is a uniform distribution of it. It's just like you are designing a beam, simply supported beam. Why it is so? Why I can just closing my eyes and says, okay, the stress distribution is gradual and the stress distribution is normal. The problem with flexible pavement is the first layer in asphalt doesn't have its compressive strength. So even though it is a structural layer, but it doesn't take all of the load. While when you construct a pavement with PCC, Portland cement concrete, all the load is taken by that. So there is very little transfer to the subgrade. That's why, that's why we call the road is uniform. And this is because the load is having the pavement itself have a high elasticity modulus. You can say that, you can easily say that the flexible pavement is 10 times lesser elasticity modulus than the rigid pavement. Normally, the flexible pavement has, a rigidity modulus varying between 350,000 to 450,000. While the flexible pavement, it has minimum 4 million, so it's 10 times. It can be more as well. So that's why the load distribution, all the load, and that's why we don't need an extra layer in case of rigid pavement. Then there is a problem with thermal stress. Thermal stress is a temperature stress. Because of temperature differentials, the pavement gets broken. As I said, the temperature above the pavement and temperature 1 inch below the pavement, they are different. And if the difference is much more, then you have a differential stress. And that's why if this differential stress is somehow we call this a thermal stresses. Normally, you have to know that no thermal stresses are developed in asphalt pavement, while we have a problem of thermal stress. That's why we have a joint. We cannot have, say 100 square meter or 100 square feet or 200 square feet of slab without having a joint because of this thermal stress. But these things, these statements are sometimes are very wild statements. But if you in an actual scenario, flexible pavement do fail with thermal stresses. And that thermal stresses is called a low temperature cracking stresses, in which in the colder climate, if your temperature falling continuously below 0 degrees centigrade and up to minus 7 degrees centigrade, flexible pavement do have this thermal cracking, and that is we call low temperature cracking. But you cannot find, let me say bluntly, maybe my knowledge is limited. In Pakistan, you don't find this problem. But thermal cracking in asphalt is very common in European countries, where you have a temperature below 0 degrees centigrade most of the time. Like Canada, we have one example. But thermal stresses. Another thing is aspect is when I talk about asphalt concrete, I mean we don't require a joint, because if in a scenario we have a warmer temperature, because warmer temperature has an effect on rigid pavement, but warmer temperature has not effect on the asphalt pavement. But if we talk about the cold climate, then there is a thermal crack. That's what I want to explain. Right? So let's go, after this discussion, let's define this flexible pavement in more detail. Flexible pavements are constructed from bituminous or unbound material, and the stress is transmitted to the subgrade through the lateral distribution of the applied load with depth. In rigid pavement, the stress is transmitted to the subgrade through beam slab effect. Rigid pavement contains sufficient beam strength to be able to bridge over localized subgrade failures and areas of inadequate support. Thus, in contrast with flexible pavement, the depression which occurs beneath the rigid pavements are not reflected in their running surfaces. So this is a concrete resting on a subgrade. This is a rigid pavement, and you can idealize this as a spring, bunch of spring, just like in a mattress. You press that spring because of load, and once the load is removed, it goes back. This, conceptually are known as the Winkler foundation sometimes, or we call it a liquid foundation like water. Now, basically, it's all about pavement design is all about knowing the stresses, the tensile and the compressive stresses induced in a pavement by heavy wheel load decrease with the increased depth. This permits the use, particularly in a flexible pavement, of a gradation of materials. Relatively strong and expensive materials being used for the surfacing and less strong and cheaper ones for base and surface. No, coming to this point, this difference between the stress and the pressure. If you look in the terms of unit, you will find the units are same. PSI or megapascal. This is for the pressure as well and the stress as well. So where is the difference? The difference is where pressure is external, stress is internal. So if a pavement survives an external pressure, it has enough strength, or the stress, if we calculate the stress equal to the external pressure, this means your pavement will perform. If the internal resistance or stress is less, then your pavement will fail. So the pavement as a whole limit the stress in the subgrade to an acceptable level, and the upper layer must in a similar manner protect the layers below. So if you talk about a flexible pavement, we mean you have to keep increasing the depth of that flexible pavement till the point is reached where the stresses, internal stresses of the pavement becomes equal to the external stress, or sometimes more, right? Not many more, because if you go for a conservative become liberal thing, that if you want to have more stress, you can have more depth. You can have an infinite depth as well, but this is not economical, right? So that's why we have to obey this law of reaction equal reaction. So precisely now we can define the pavement now. We mean pavement design is the process of developing the most economical combination of pavement layers in relation to both thickness and the type of materials to suit the soil foundation and the traffic to be carried during the design life. Now there comes the concept of design life. What is a design life? How it is to be chosen? Have you designed a pavement 5 years, for 10 years, for 15 years, for 20 years? AASHTO says, AASHTO method of flexible pavement, most favored method all around the world, it says that you can design a pavement for 50 years as well. And that is, too much optimism there. Now, when you design a structure, you don't count for you have designed a structure for this house for say 15 years. No. The concept of design life is only available in pavement design, not in the structure design. Now, what is the philosophy of the pavement? The pavements are live structures. They are subjected to moving traffic loads that are repetitive in nature. Each traffic load repetition causes a certain amount of damage to the pavement structure that gradually accumulates over time and eventually leads to the pavement failure. Thus, the pavements are designed to perform for a certain lifespan before reaching an unacceptable degree of deterioration. This is not the case of the house. You cannot let the house deteriorate to at this point. You have to do maintenance, but as compared to the pavement, you have to do maintenance regularly. Sometimes you have to improve, even the pavement is not structurally failed, you have to improve its riding surface. And this is where have to have a periodic maintenance on the pavement. So this is the bottom line. Pavement are designed to fail. The pavement, if I mean 20 years, it means my pavement is not going to last for 20 years, except in an exceptional condition. And it can be earlier than that as well. So they have a certain design life. So let's I think stop this